So I'll just start by introducing myself. My title is very grand. It's the Flame Group Commercial Director. So I'll tell you a bit about the Flame Group. It's a group of media organisations. It's actually headquartered in Sydney. So there's a distribution company. Distribution company is a company that sells television programmes around the world, and they're based in Sydney. In Cardiff, there's a television production company, Wild Flame Productions. Quite new, so you might not have seen too many credits. Largely making programmes at the moment for BBC Wales and S4C, but looking to do more and more as we grow. Within the group, there's also a production company in Germany, and there's an advisory part to the business, which is the part that I work in, where we do all sorts of things like we advise companies on how to raise money, and companies are also bought and sold themselves within the media sector. So you might run a little production company and a bigger production company might want to buy you. So we help to make that happen. We help give the advice to make that happen. So that's the group. And I work across all of the companies in the group. So I don't just work for though I sit in the production company in Cardiff, I work across all of those businesses. I'm what they call an in-house solicitor and a commercial advisor, really. So my training is law, business law, mostly that's what I focused on, but most of my career has been in the television sector. They say in-house solicitor because, there's lots of different types of solicitors and different types of lawyers, from barristers through to solicitors, through to people who work in law firms, and I've done a bit of that. I started off working in law firms myself, but then chose to go in-house. So what that means is you act as a lawyer, but within the company itself, you're not sat with other lawyers getting instructions from people. You actually sit within the business itself and you advise on legal matters or commercial matters or contractual matters. You advise the company. And so, like I said, I've worked mostly in the media sector. So what do I do all day? So I thought it might be just interesting to explain a little bit about a couple of things that are on my desk, just to give you a little bit of an insight. So yesterday I was asked to advise two producers who were going out, and they were taking an 86-year-old. You can turn it off if you want, don't worry. Happens to me all the time.
Lisa, that is a beauty.
Sorry. So I'll carry on so it's not too bad. So we had an 86-year-old who was abseiling off the Newport Transporter Bridge yesterday, and we had a film crew out there filming her doing this, and so they came to me and said, what do we need to be thinking of? So the things I had to think about in that situation was obviously health and safety, although that's really the production crew's bag. They have to go out there and risk assess the shoot. From my point of view, I have to look at our insurance and the contracts that we have. So we hired a company to come in and do this abseil with this 86-year-old lady. It's a programme about old age, and I think we have a presenter. You might know her. We shouldn't say this is confidential as yet, but Hayley, who was in the call centre. Do you know her? Well, she's doing a programme about old age, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but she took an 86-year-old lady up Newport Transporter Bridge, and they did an abseil down it. So I had to protect the company in this, and I had to make sure that we had the right contracts in place with the people providing that service for us. I had to phone our insurance company and say, look, what if something goes wrong? Are we covered, and to what level? Do we need to buy some more insurance? The fact of her age, does that make any difference? So I just had to have the conversations to manage the risk around that. So that's quite a big part of my job. So going from that to, I'm also dealing with an international co-production where Channel 4 are interested in taking a series that's actually going out in Asia at the moment. It's called The Apartment. And we are looking to take that, somebody else's idea, go enter into a contract with them and say, you'll let us have, the know-how, how to make that programme, and we'll pitch it to Channel 4 in the UK. And then if Channel 4 take it, we'll co-produce it together. So we'll use their skills and expertise, the people who are producing it out in Asia at the moment, and we'll make it applicable. We'll make the programme, we'll develop the programme so it's applicable to the UK market, because it will need to be changed. We might need a different presenter, blah, blah, blah. And then I would do a contract between us there'll be loads of contracts between us and Channel 4 because they'd be buying the programme from us, and between us and the company who actually came up with the idea of the programme in the first place. So that's another part of my job, international co-productions. I've also on my desk got, because I mentioned we've got part of the business that gives people advice on buying and selling their businesses, and that activity has to be regulated by an organisation called the Financial Conduct Authority. So because my role is quite regulatory as well, so I advise on what we can and can't do within the law. I'm basically oversee to make sure that we're acting within the rules of the Financial Conduct Authority when we're giving that advice. Television is highly regulated in the UK by an organisation called Ofcom, and so the BBC have their own rules as well. So I have to make sure if we're putting out programmes that it's compliant with Ofcom's rules about. I've got a programme at the moment. We're making a programme for Channel 5. It's about hand models, and they keep saying, "Oh, I've done a programme. I've done a hand model shoot with Vogue magazine, and it was Kate Moss, and then Rimmel." And so they're mentioning all these brand names all the time, which the rules say you're not allowed to do unless it's editorially justified. So I have to watch the footage that comes in and decide whether that's okay or not within the rules. So that's another big part of my job. Much of what I do sort of goes around copyright law, so I have to know a fair bit about copyright law, because when we make a programme, as the first maker of that programme, we own the copyright in the programme. And so when we let the BBC show our programme, or Channel 4 or Channel 5, we enter into a contract with them to license our copyright to them to put the programme out. So a lot of what I do is licensing of copyright, drafting contracts to license copyright. And then contracts generally, I've mentioned access agreements. Because we work in the kind of non-drama field, it's mostly factual stuff. This is quite a common thing I have to do. So we made a programme about First Minister recently. His name's gone completely out of my head. The outgoing First Minister. Cameron Jones, thank you. So I had to draft a contract between us and the Welsh Government to say that you'll let us come in, you'll let us film Cameron Jones, you'll let us have access to his private office and his team around him and all of this stuff. So we have to do that quite a lot because a lot of our programmes are kind of based around going into other people's organisations and letting us film. And often people get very nervous, as you can imagine, to let a film crew in. So I end up having conversations with them about what we can and can't do, and they want to control, and we push back all the time because the broadcaster won't let them control, otherwise it just becomes an advert for their organisation, if you see what I mean. So you have rows with people as to, please let us in, but don't try and control it because we can't agree to that because the BBC won't let us. So, and then I've mentioned copyright licences, and contributor contracts is another thing which I do quite a lot. Sometimes they're just little contributors, somebody that we're interviewing, or it might be somebody mega famous who is, presenting the programme for us. So it can go from can you just sign this piece of paper, through to a very long negotiation about fees and the hours that they'll work and what they will and won't do. So that's that. So that's pretty much what I do all day. Why study law? I suppose what I do is quite niche because it's in television, it's in the media sector. But law covers all sorts of different areas. And you could be a barrister, you could be a solicitor, you could be a criminal lawyer, you could be a business lawyer. There's a huge, huge spectrum. I actually think, and somebody asked me before, are you going to advocate that law is a good thing to do, or are you going to say that it isn't? So I've thought hard about this, and actually I do think it is. I think it's a good subject to study in today's world. It delivers all sorts of things, lots of skills that can be used anywhere. So I spoke to somebody yesterday who's an executive producer in television. She makes television programmes. She studied law, she was telling me, and she said it's been really useful because she has to deal with situations all the time where there might be a contractual issue, or it's just really helped her in her career as an executive producer, so it's come in handy. So I think studying law can give you skills, knowledge that can be used anywhere. It can also give you all sorts of different options. Just because you've got a law degree, you don't have to go off and be like a criminal lawyer, which is what a lot of people might think. You can end up in-house, like me, within a law firm, within a high street law firm, people doing divorce law, family law, or conveyancing, that sort of stuff. Or you can end up in the City of London buying and selling massive companies, you know, and advising, I don't know, Tesco's on their latest acquisition or sale of one of their businesses or something. So it covers a huge spectrum, really, really different. And there are lawyers everywhere within government, you know, within the UN, there's lawyers, armies of lawyers in the UN. So, you know, it can take you anywhere, basically. I think it's interesting to study, genuinely. Studying crime, you know, the business side of things to study, I mean, I found it quite interesting, but most people really like studying crime, you know, like what is the definition of murder? Like how do you know you've committed murder as opposed to manslaughter? What's the legal definition? So you get into, and you study lots of cases, so you study, you know, case law that shows what how we've arrived at the definition of murder. Somebody did something or another, and did that constitute a murder or not? Ethics, you can get into like medical ethics. So when you're studying law, you learn a lot about, you know, what should the law be governing? Should we be, you know, should we be controlling human fertilization, for example? So you study that sort of stuff. Should we, what should doctors be able to do and not be able to do? You know, the law governs all of that, and so you study these areas of law, so you learn a lot. It teaches you about history. So the history of our court system, where it came from, and its interrelationship with government as well. And there's a sort of power between government and the judiciary, and so it's, yeah, you know, that sort of power struggle. And the history, you know, you study a lot of case law, so you can go back to really old cases that tell you a lot about our society and how it's changed over the years. Politics, it teaches you a lot about politics and how the world works. So I've studied European law, so, you know, I kind of know a little bit about Brexit and before it became a thing. So, you know, it teaches you an awful lot about how the world works. Company law does as well, contract law. You know, you learn a lot just from studying a law degree. And then where it can take you, you know, often you find lawyers on the boards of organisations because things need to be minuted, and companies need to operate within company law and stuff, so it can take you to quite senior positions later on. Why should you not study law? So what's the downsides? And like any job, it's not perfect, so, and any degree course is not perfect. You know, if you're in a legal role, often you can have long hours. You're more likely to have long hours if you're within a law firm. Within a bigger law firm doing company or business law, the hours can be quite punishing. In-house, they tend to be more flexible, which is one of the reasons I'm there. Well, you can end up quite a lot at the beck and call of clients, in particular in a law firm, because there's so many lawyers, there's quite a lot of competition in the market. So if a client wants something now, then you have to deliver it, otherwise they'll just go elsewhere. So it's quite, you know, it's the long hour kind of, you've got to do what the client wants kind of culture within a law firm. Drafting, I'm not going to lie, can be quite boring if you start drafting contracts. This is my area of practice. There's less drafting, of course, if you're a criminal lawyer or something, but you always have to draft letters and stuff. But there are certain, you know, I can't say that I'm enthralled by the thought of drafting an IT contract. You know, it's like anything, though it's a mixed bag. There are some things that I think are great, you know, that's really interesting. And I think in any career you choose, there'll be stuff about it that you hate and stuff about it that you love. And then I have put harder work than some other subjects. So I have to say that this is, I think this is true. I actually did a French degree first before I swapped to law. And on my French degree, I only had 8 hours a week taught in front of it. The rest of the time I was supposed to be off doing my own work, and I'm sure I did at the time. But when I switched to law, I did notice that, you know, I thought, I'm really going to have to raise my game here. It was a little bit of a step up. There was a bit more competition. You know, the students were a bit more, on it, driven, thinking about their careers a lot more than sort of creative people that I was sort of with before. So it's kind of a different way. It can be quite hard. You have to be pretty committed, I think, especially if you want to go on to be a solicitor. Oh yes, so one reason not to study one reason that you shouldn't, sorry, I'm going to get this wrong, you should, a reason not to avoid doing law is, sorry, so to say that there are too many people trying to get into law is not a reason to avoid doing law, if you see what I'm saying. Right, does that make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that just because there are loads of people, and there is a fierce competition to get into it, I mean, there certainly was in my day, you know, if you really want to do it, go for it. And you can do it in all sorts of different ways. I know people who couldn't get a training contract, for example, who ended up going and working in a law firm and just, you know, did a couple of years' work and ended up there. I know people have had other careers who've swapped to law. If you really, really want to do it, just go for it. You just have to be really committed and work hard. And you know, that's like in any industry, whatever you choose to do. If you want to get on, there's no escaping hard work. Sadly, that's how it is. So just be focused and determined. But don't be frightened by numbers of people, I think, is the thing. Because I remember thinking, gosh, you know, am I going to get a training contract? And I'm not sure, you know, if I really got what it takes. And but I just sat and plodded and kept sending out the applications and was absolutely determined that I would. And eventually I did. So my route into a career in law is a little quirky, but it's what I can talk to you about most knowledgeably. I can't really tell you that much about being a barrister or being a criminal lawyer. So I'll just quickly run through what I've done and how I've ended up where I am. So I did 3 A-levels at this school. Actually, I did English, Politics and Government, and French. And then I went on to Cardiff University and I did a French degree. And then sort of came out thinking, what am I going to do with this French degree? And decided actually that I'd borrow a load of money, go back to university and study what's called the Common Professional Exam, CPE, at University of Glamorgan. And which is probably not the best way to do it these days, especially because then I didn't have fees to pay. So, you know, nowadays, if you're going to do law and you want to do another subject, you can, of course, combine them. You could do French and law. You know, that would have been a far more sensible way of doing it. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, really. So this is how I ended up doing it. So Common Professional Exam is basically the 3-year law degree squashed into a year. So it's really hard work. I didn't leave the house and I lived in tracksuit bottoms for a year. And my boyfriend jumped to me, which was and then, but all the way, so straight away, as soon as I'd made that decision, and it was partly because I'd borrowed the money as well, I thought, right, I have to make this work. So I started reading straight away, how do I get a training contract? Straight away, you know, I knew it was really competitive. So I started reading and looking at the types of firms I might want to go and work for, and I started to accumulate, at that stage, a pile of application forms. Nowadays it's all online, but then it was application forms. And I just said, I'm going to do 2 a night for the year that I'm studying for my training contract. You have to apply 2 years ahead for a training contract usually. So I sat and I plodded and I sent out 2 application forms a night. But, you know, I was an absolute pro at sending out those applications because it's the same wording, the same questions, so just cut and paste it these days. I've lost the thing. But, so that's what I did. And then after that, I was actually very lucky because I had a language. A law firm in the City of London decided we quite like people with languages. So sometimes it is a good thing to have another skill. If you have another language, if you've come from a different background into law, it makes you a little bit different. So it can make you a bit more interesting. So they decided we've got a French office and we want to hire someone with a language. So they probably took me on because I had the language. And they actually sponsored me. So they paid for me to do my legal practice course, which is the next year of training that you have to do. That's quite hard work. Some of the exams are like 5 hours long, so you have to be pretty committed. But I've got to say, it's really interesting. You have to do advocacy, you have to stand up and, you know, pretend you're in court, and you sort of argue someone's case, a plea in litigation. You know, if someone's committed a crime and they've been found guilty, and then you stand up in a court situation and you have to kind of say, well, he's guilty, but you have to take into account all of these things when you're sentencing, and so you try and reduce. So, you know, stuff like that is really interesting. Company law, you think it sounds boring, but actually it's fascinating. I sound like such a geek, but it is. It's really, really interesting. You know, how companies work, what they are and aren't allowed to do. They're actually an amazing invention, companies. They've enabled business to happen. So, I mean, I found that stuff really interesting. I felt the legal practice course in particular really helped me understand the world I was living in a bit more than I did before. Then I did a 2-year training contract, which I went to City of London to do. And part of my training contract, I was lucky, I was seconded to MTV for 6 months, which was amazing. And I met Robbie Williams and stuff. And, I went to the V Festival and all of that stuff, which was great. I then moved back home to Cardiff because that's what I wanted to do. My husband and I wanted to come here and live and have children. And so I worked for Morgan Cole, and they're now Blake Morgan, I think they're called, for a couple of years, just doing general commercial law and a bit of public law, lots of contract drafting. Then I got a job at BBC Wales, where I stayed for about 10 years. I've also since then worked for S4C in-house, a company called Lawyers on Demand, which I thought I'd mention to you because there's another option these days. You don't have to go to work to be a lawyer, you can actually work from home through another law firm. So Lawyers on Demand is set up by a London company, a big law firm in London, and they basically have lawyers sat at home working for them as freelancers. So at that point I had my children, so I was working for them a few days a week from home. And then the last job I had before this one, I worked for a law firm called Wigan, who are a ridiculous bunch of workaholics who never go home, basically. But they do amazing work, and they do all the financing for films, lots of feature films that you'd have heard of. They do all the contracts on Game of Thrones, for example, like all the big name stuff. They're probably the best media law firm in the country, really. But they never go home, so that's quid pro quo. They never see their family. So I wasn't going to stay there that long, because that wasn't for me. Right, not too much longer, sorry. Business skills. What skills do you need? What skills do you need to be a business lawyer? And I thought about this as well, quite hard, and some of these are probably quite surprising. Like, you think business lawyers might be quite hard and tough and macho, and it's all about, leaving your suit on the back of the chair to show you never go home and that sort of stuff. But actually, in my view, these are the skills that actually really make a good business lawyer. And the first one's empathy. And you think, well, what are you talking about? How come? It's empathy. And the reason I said empathy and empathy first is because, in my view, the best negotiators are the people who understand the other side straight away. So when I'm going into a negotiation, I will always know what I want to get out of it, what the position where I want to end up. But I'll also then think, okay, this is what I want. That's where I want to end up. What are they looking for? So I try and empathise with them as people. What do they know? Are they at their depth? Do they know a lot about this? Do they know more than I do? But also, what's their company? What's their aim? What's their bottom line? What are they trying to get? And then I can work out, before I even go into it, where the areas of compromise might be. So, then you do a bit of posturing, because you have to. You kind of big up the things that, the cards that you hold, sort of thing. So, for example, on that international co-production, I know that the company that's co-producing with us, they're based in Singapore. They would love to be on Channel 4. And we can deliver Channel 4 because we're based here. We have the relationship with Channel 4. So I keep sort of slipping into the emails. So yeah, Channel 4 this, and it's just holding my place sort of thing, because I know that's what they're really after. But ultimately, they're going to come and bash up and says, we need them because it's their idea. So they're going to come and beat me down with all of that. And somewhere in the middle, we'll compromise. So empathy is really important. It's not about being macho. It's not about getting one over on the other side and well done, because actually, the way you reach a deal is you understand the other side and you reach compromise. Good judgment, just common sense, really. I think that's really important if you're in any job, but, just be yourself and trust your own instincts. You have to kind of like to help and solve problems. You have to get satisfaction out of solving problems and sticking with it until it's solved. You do have to derive pleasure from work. There's no escaping work. We all have to pay the mortgage and the rest of it. And so, it's one of those things. The way I derive pleasure is I just try and do it as best I can, because then I know at the end I get some sort of sense of achievement. Even if I don't like the job, I think, well, I'll give it my best, because if I just half-heartedly do it, I won't enjoy it, and I'll just shove it in, and I know there'll be no, thanks sort of later. But even if I hate it, if I give it my best shot, then at least someone will thank me for it potentially, or so I think you have to kind of really try. You have to work hard, is the bottom line. So you might as well try and enjoy what you're doing. You have to like working with others, because often you'll be on teams of people doing stuff. You have to be able to get on with other people in your office. You have to go and have meetings and talk to them and understand all the different points of view to move projects forward. So those are all the most important things, I think. And then there's the stuff that you might imagine. You have to be good with words. You might often find analysis. You often find yourself reading a sentence and then thinking, what does that really mean? Actually, what does that? You have to be very clear in what you're saying when you're drafting. You have to, so there's no ambiguity. So in a contract, for example, if you've got one clause that says one thing and another clause that says another, and they contradict, there's a risk that the contract wouldn't be upheld. It would be void for uncertainty. So if you're trying to rely on that contract and it's not clear and you haven't drafted it well, or someone else has sent it to you and you haven't picked up that there's a contradiction. So you do have to do a bit of analysis. You have to be good with words. You have to think. You have to step back and think, well, actually, what does that really mean? I know what that means to me, but how might they interpret that word or that sentence? So you have to do a lot of that. And then attention to detail. It's what everybody says about lawyers. When I was your age, I had rubbish attention to detail, like really bad. If you want to do it and if you want to get on, you can develop that skill. I think if you're determined enough, you can give yourself a kick up the backside to sit and actually plod through the detail if you want to succeed in it. And there's detail in every job. So so those are my thoughts on that. And then some tips. Lastly, so if you want to get into law, you do have to be on the ball. You do have to be 2 steps ahead and thinking ahead all the time. So when you go into university, if you start studying law, start immediately thinking, reading. You have to think about getting work placements, because they all do, and there'll always be somebody who's very well connected, who's gone to Oxbridge, whose mum and dad are already a lawyer, and all of that stuff with a million. But don't be put off by that, because actually sometimes those people are not the hungriest. They actually, might be quite privileged, they might have had an easier life. And actually, if you're hungry and you want it, people will see that and they'll reward you for it, and they'll know that you're going to be more loyal, you're more likely to stay with them. So get the work placements. It doesn't have to be in the biggest, posh law firms. Go to the high street one. If you know anybody, you should contact any contact you've got, or even just blindly email somebody and ask, or stick a letter through the door of a high street law firm. I started working for a high street law firm in Penarth. Somebody my mum kind of knew. I think she'd done some secretarial work for them. I didn't have any contacts, so that's how I kind of got into it. So, but you do have to try and do that. You have to put those on your CV. Read about law. Read about becoming a lawyer. That is, I've done some printouts as well of that. Probably don't have enough, but anyway, there's that, and I can probably email you the thing afterwards. But that's something I found on the web, which is just I think it's aimed at students who are already studying law, but it gives you an idea. It talks a little bit about understanding the process. It talks about vacation schemes, law schools, training contracts. It just gives you a bit of an introduction into what it's all about. And then be determined. Don't try too hard. Be yourself. And don't. I think this is probably the biggest tip, and this is probably the mistake that I made the most when I was a junior lawyer, or go for interviews and stuff. When you're sat in front of somebody, they're not looking at you as expecting you to know everything about the law. It's not your knowledge. When you walk out of law school, when you walk out of law school, you start in a law firm. The PAs, the secretaries, tell you what to do because you are nothing, you know nothing, sort of thing. So don't put that pressure on yourself that you have to be the finished article. Go to an interview. Be humble, be honest, and be yourself, because they're not expecting more. So don't make your life too hard, because that'll just stop you from getting where you want to go to. Just have an open mind, be yourself. There you go.